Hello, good morning to all of you. Am I audible to you? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear.
Uh, okay, thank you very much. So, um, so shall we start? So, all of the students present in the classroom. Okay, right. So, first of all, I want you to thank you for submitting all these assignments. So, let's go through the assignment that we did last week, and if you have any kind of problems or any questions regarding the assignment that we did last week, uh, you can ask. Okay, so let me go through the assignment very quickly. Then we'll move to the lecture today, right? So it was a pretty simple exercise. Let me share my screen. Okay, so you can you can let me know if you have any questions, right? Like the message itself, you can let me know. So right. So I think the first part is not that difficult difficult for you because it's all about how you use different kind of operators, right? So that was about your understanding on that, right? So first the answer should be okay to you. Like stop me if you have any questions. So this part is, I think you are fine with that. You just have to plug in the numbers and run the Python program and see. And here also the same. I think you should find it okay, because this is just understanding the uh, types of the data that we are using, right? So this code I think also should be okay. A lot of you have answered this one correctly without any problem. So we have I've asked what is the code that you are using to get the square root of 100 or any number in this case, right? So similarly, square of 5, right? This is also simple question. I think most of you are okay with the codes regarding these two questions, right? So I'll move quickly. If you have questions, you can stop me, right? So next, the strings, right? So here the question is, uh, get letter E from this specific string, right? So this is about indexing and slicing. So if you, as we have assigned this variable s to the hello, this is the first index number, right? So what we will obtain defining s square bracket 1, that means we are getting letter E, right? So we are indexing. So this should be okay. So no questions are in this, right? This is a simple question, right? So this is also indexing, right? The indexing and slicing, as you may remember, uh, we discussed about slicing method. So first you have to give the starting point and the ending index, and finally the step, right? So if we want to reverse this one, so we just, if we want to reverse whole word. So what we have to do is get the word, and at the place where you need to indicate the step, you just write -1, right? So the your expected output will be this one, right? This is also a simple uh, problem that anybody can answer without any problem, right? And I think this one is fine. And the third one is also uh, method of obtaining the last letter of a string, right? So you have two options. One option is if you know how many letters are there, so you can get the last letter by directly entering the index of that specific letter. Or else what you can do is you can just enter -1, right, or -1. That will always grab always grab the last letter from a string type data, right? So I think you are okay with that, this part as well, right? Any questions so far? You can ask if you have any questions. Okay. Okay. Let's move on. So next part, I and what are the uh, operations and methods that you can do with list type of data. So here is just refreshing that memory, right? So here first we have created the list, and it's asking how to create the list with two separate methods. So the first method is you can create like this. You are defining a variable, and then you have entering the I mean as a whole you are defining the list with the elements inside the list. So that is the first method. So the second method is that uh, you can multiply the number of elements that you need with 3. This is another method that you can create a list. This one will still create a list, but without inputting all the numbers one by one, all the zeros one by one. So you can assign a variable here as well, and you can create the list similar to this. Any questions? Seems like weird method to do, but actually it's possible to do something like that, right? And when we discussed, I told you, unlike the tuples, we can reassign or add or remove something from a list. We have that flexibility when you are working with them. So here also, uh, question is, there's a string or a word inside this list. So it's asking replace this word with another word, right? So this is hello, and it's been asking to replace that hello with goodbye. So what you have to do is you have to use the indexing, right? So indexing means, so here there are two lists. So first you have to identify the inner lists index. So it's 0 1 2. The inner list index is 2, so it will come here. And inner lists also is indexed, right? So you have to go inside there as well. So inner list in, then we have to assign the value that we are going to replace it, right? So if you do that properly, you will be able to replace this hello world without a problem, right? So this is the expected output. So this is the code that you need to run. uh, in order to get the output, expected output, right? So any questions from that part? Do you have any questions, any concerns, questions? I think this should be fairly simple thing that you can do. Okay, moving on. So if you have any problem, please ask. Okay, right. So the next question was a list is given and it's asked to sort, right? The sort method, right? Sort method arrange whatever you have inside that list in ascending order, right? So this is sort function is a function sort method actually is method associated with this type of data. So this question is specifically directed you to understand about the methods that associated with uh, the list data type that you are working with, right? So in this question this is just one line answer you have to do. So the list 4 is the list that you have to work with, and dot sort means it will sort out the elements inside, right? So output will be like that. So it will get sorted without problem. So your answer should be this one, right? I hope that one also not that difficult. So all of these are one line answers, right? At the towards the end of the uh, question paper, I mean assignment, there were a little bit uh, new type of questions are asked, but this top part is just very simple. So so let me clarify. Are you okay with this lists questions? Questions regarding list type. Okay, hopefully. So you can anytime you can ask a question if you have any, right? No problem. Just stop me and ask. Right. So then the next set of questions are regarding the dictionaries to check your understanding about dictionaries. So here the question is grab hello. That means hello is actually a value, right? So in a key value pair, you can grab a value using its key, right? So this we can call it from the dictionary name, and within square brackets you have to include the key. So if you run this one without any problem, you can get the value, right? So this one is the simplest form. Just okay. So the starting point of nesting, the so it also asks to grab the hello word from here. So this is a dictionary within a dictionary. So you have to use two key values to grab that one. So first key will show you the value which is a dictionary, right? So K1 will provide you with this key, another key to get the value, right? So that is what has happened here. So first you have to get the first key, and it will give you this value, which is also a dictionary, right? And then you will run the second key, and you will get the access to this word, right? Any questions? Okay, so the last two questions are a little bit trickier. So these last two questions absolutely check your understanding regarding the nesting functions, nesting of dictionaries. So still we are trying to grab this hello. So inside the key one, the value is a list, right? So this is a list. So inside that list, the first value is a dictionary, and the second value is, sorry, yeah, first value is a dictionary, and inside that dictionary you have access to two lists, right? So that is why this trickiness there. So you have to access first the key, it will give you the access to the list. In that list you have to grab the zeroth index one. So that zeroth index version is actually a dictionary, and then if it is a dictionary you have to use the key, right? So the key has been used, and this key will give you the access to another. What is this? This is actually another list, right? So in this list you have to, this, I mean, the zeroth index one is not the one that we required, but the first index one is another list that we have to access, right? So the hello, so one, and the zeroth index position is the zero. So that is why it's a little bit tricky to access the question number four, but hopefully you have done that. And similarly, the fifth one also a little bit trickier, right? So here also, first you have a key, right? And that key one will give you access to a list. So this is a list. So that is why the first one is key value that you have given. The second part is the index position of that specific list, right? So we are accessing 0, 1, and 2. This 2 is a dictionary. This is the dictionary. And then because it is a dictionary, you have to give a key, and then a index position and another key, and finally index position to access this hello, right? So it's a key, and inbuilt key you have several dictionaries and lists to access, right? So any questions from this? Have you got it right? So these are the answers. Actually, I will highlight. This is a one answer. This is the other answer. Some of you missed this last value. Some of you have missed this last indexing value, but most of you have got it right. The last index value also you have to give, right? Because sandwich between the So, any questions from this up to now? Are you okay? Okay. So, the answer for this one: can you sort a dictionary? Uh, the result is the answer is the dictionary. They cannot be sorted because dictionaries are considered as mapping. So, due to that specific reason, you cannot sort out a dictionary, right? Okay. So, any questions from dictionaries? It's fairly this last part is little bit complex. Other than that, you should be fine. Any questions from that? Okay. So, next question is regarding the tuples, right? So, the major difference between tuple and a list is that tuple does not allow you to change its content once you create it, right? So that property called the mutability. So it's also helpful when you are passing data from one kind of a function to another function. So that is very helpful because its immutability cannot be the data inside will not be changed. So you can pass the data between functions using tuples. That is the main reasons to having a data type called tuples, right? Square brackets like this, but for lists you are using square brackets instead of parentheses, right? That is the simplest explanation. Okay. So I hope that you don't have any questions. So this is the next question is regarding sets. So we discussed about sets as well. So it doesn't allow you to duplicate items inside. So that is the uniqueness. So this is an example. The second question. So there's a list, and inside the list there are several repeated numbers. You just can sort them out, right? So you can sort it out and remove the uh, duplicating numbers with this single line. Okay, so I I hope you don't have any questions regarding this one also. This is a single line code. It's not very difficult. Okay, so this is a little bit difficult. I mean, not difficult. For you guys, it should be a simple thing. So it's asking the question. There's a method called split, which is associated to string type data. So the question asked here to use that split method and if statement to print out all the letters starting with S. So this is the paragraph that you have to work with, right? So print only the word that start with S in this sentence. So answer should be S. I mean start S and sentence. That is it. Should be the output. We have to identify that one first. Okay. So then we have to get a loop, right? So we have to use a for loop, right? We have to use for loop to go through every word inside this specific paragraph, right? So we define word variable in st dot split, right? So the split function, I think we discussed about that, right? The split function, it will split wherever you want, right? So if you provide nothing inside, so that means it will look for spaces, right? So it will split this specific string where there is a space. So that is what we want, right? So we have to take one word by one word, and then we have to check whether the word is first index character is S, right? So that is what you have to do. Right. Okay. So that is what you have to do, right? So then we have to introduce, of course, an if conditional statement to check whether the first character of this specific word starting from S, right? So if the word, the first index, this is the first index, is equal to S, right? Then we are going to print the word. So this is the logic that you have to create. Some of you have got it right, but most of you have missed this one. You have written a lengthy word here, right? So it is not the code, it's not the logic. Of course, I mean, the logic should be like this. So you understand what happens. So we get the get a word which is split from these spaces, and for each word we are checking we are checking whether the first index letter is equal to 0. So that is what we are doing. So it's just very three line simple code, so you can get the result that you want. So how many of you have got it right? Do you have any questions regarding this one? It's very simple form of logic, but any questions from this one? So let me show you. I will run this one and show you. Okay. Uh, Let me create a new notebook. Okay, so this is the code, right? So we have the string variable and for loop, and if I run this one, so it will give you the output. Similarly, you just can change this value. So as an example, if I put t here, and it will give you the word starting from that specific letter. So the split function okay, so let's discuss the final question. That is also the using range function. I think you are okay with that. So it's asking, so it's asking yeah, so it's asking whether uh, how to create even numbers from 0 to 1. So this is also a one liner. So do you remember that we discussed about range method? So you have to give first starting point and the ending point. If you want to include number 10, then we have to give plus 1, so the 11, and the step is 2, right? So in this case, range function can be used to create a list of even numbers from 0 to 10. So this is the code that you have to write, right? Any questions? I think it's fairly simple, right? And the final question, this is also similar to the one that discussed earlier. So uh, instead of choosing words starting from a character, so here what we do is we will check if the word has even number of letters or odd number of letters, right? So that is what sorry so that is what we have to do here, right? So we can use the same for an if function here as well. So instead of checking for the letter, so we are taking the length of the word. So if you remember the len function, len function, that will give you the number of characters of a string or number of elements in a list or number of elements in a tuple likewise, right? So it will give you the number of elements inside a indexed version of a data type. So this len function can be used to count the number of characters of that specific word, right? So number of characters of that specific word, and this is the modulo function, right? Modulo means we are checking the remainder. So we divided it by 2 and get the remainder. If the remainder is 1, that means it has odd number of characters. So if the remainder is 0, it has, I mean, it is a even uh, character word, right? So at the end, we will print the word which is even length. So this is what's happening here. So I will run this code as well to show you the output. So okay, this is the code. So this is the phrase that we are checking, right? So for word in this string split at that where there are spaces. So here at every space the word will be splitted, and we will check the length of that word using len function, right? And that value will be divided by 2 and get the remainder, right? So modulo means we are always checking the remainder, right? So which will check the remainder, and if it is 0 then that means it's a even number. If it is not equal to 0 that means it's odd number, right? So if I run this one, the output is as expected, right? So all the words which has uh, even number of characters will be printed out in this case. So that was the last question of your assignment we did last week. So any questions from that? I will correct them and give it to you as soon as possible so you can check your understanding. Most of you have done it well, but the last two questions were not answered properly. So that's why I thought to have a small discussion and give you some kind of insight or some kind of explanation regarding that. Any questions, any problems that you need, any clarifications before we move to the next uh, topic? Okay, so let me move on to the next topic then. So now we are moving towards you know uh, not complex but advanced programming methods in Python. So what I can do is that I will introduce you to these concepts, and next week as well I will give you a small in class assignment. So it's the important thing is that you need to code more often in Python, similar to other programming languages as well, to get used to the environment. So next week also I'll give you an uh, in class assignment. I mean a question. I mean that is a kind of a problem, and you have to code to solve that problem, and you need to submit, right? So if if your friends are not here, I mean not here in the class today, please pass the message to them as well, right? Okay, so with the introduction of today's topic, I think 80% of your Python programming is covered, right? So as you may know, I cannot give you all single details. I can give you the concepts and the explanation for that. It's your responsibility to go on and check out the supplementary information, right? Okay, so let me start today's lecture. So we have two topics to cover. One is the methods in Python. uh, Actually we have used methods. So I will give you a small overall understanding about what are the methods and how to pass arguments and regarding those things. And it will be, after that it is completed, and then we will have to discuss about the functions in Python. And I think similar to functions in other programming languages. So we can use functions to stop reusing the same code again and again, right? So let's discuss when it comes to that, right? So I hope you have heard about object oriented programming, right? So what is the language that that you did for OOP? Is Java. What is the OOP language that you did? Java or C plus? Okay, okay. So Java. So more or less the what do you call concepts are the same. The way of approaching is a little bit different, but the concepts of polymorphism, abstraction, encapsulation, everything is there here. So we have actually worked with these OOP concepts. I mean, with objects in the Python until now, right? So if we have time, I will introduce the OOP method of Python. But I think more or less you will be able to grab that. So we will be using a lot of methods here in Python as well. So we have used those things. So the methods, they're actually in the form of this, right? So methods is actually a easier way to interact with your objects. So in simple terms, all these things, so integers, lists, uh, tuples, dictionaries, all of them are actually objects, right? So these objects can be associated with different kind of methods, and then you can introduce different arguments, right? So as an example, just few minutes ago, we used a method called split, right? The split is actually associated with string type of data. So string type of data in Python is considered as an object, right? So using methods and creating methods is very important to understand the overall working principle when coding with Python, right? So this is the form, the general form of accessing a method which is connected to a object, right? So there's something called self argument, which is related to OOP. But if we have time, if the time permits, we'll discuss about that. Otherwise, this is slightly uh, similar to that self-referring method, right? So let's try some examples, right? So let me create a list. So this is a simple list. So it has, let me clear the kernel. Okay, so, right. So this is a simple list, right? So there are uh, different methods associated with this list objects, right? They are coming, I mean, they are inbuilt. Actually, you don't have to program. It's inbuilt in Python code. So these are some of the methods that associated with these list type of data. Actually, some of them we have already used. So append, count, extend. So pop we have used, sort we have used. All of these methods, they are actually associated with this type of data. So shall we, let's try few of them. So originally there are only five numbers, 1 to 5. So we can use this append to introduce a new element to the list that you have already created. So if you run this one, check, see that it will give you the number of elements that you require, right? And the last element that you have added will be shown here. So that is the append function. So you can access this uh, list of methods associated that with that specific object using, I mean, you can type dot and press tab on your keyboard. Type dot and press tab. So it will give you the access to all the methods associated with that specific object, right? So did you understand what I'm saying? So you can quickly access to all the methods available for that specific object by typing dot and pressing tab on your keyboard. So it will give you access to the methods, right? Okay. Any questions? Okay, so let us try another method. So initially, so I want to show you. Initially, we didn't have more than one element from each of them. So one, two, three, four, five was there, and we added using append method another two here, right? So then we can check how many times this number two appears inside our list. That is also a method. So we can use this count method and give our requirement, or we can pass the what you say argument, right, in general form. So if you run this one, and it will show you that it appears two times. So in first time here, second time here, it appears two time in your inside your list, right? So there are two ways to get help. I mean, get a understanding about the methods that you are using. First one is you can use Shift tab, right? Shift tab, and it will show you how this works. What are the what is each of these? Sorry. So what is each of these keywords says, right? See, so it's actually very helpful. That is the help function, and also you can have help keyword to unveil the or to show the purpose and limitations of the methods that you are using, right? So documentation is very important when it comes to programming in any programming. So you can access to that documentation from here as well, right? Okay, so let's check another one. So this is the pop method. We used that method previously to remove a specific element from there. So here we are popping the first indexed element, so which is one. And now if you check, see, one is missing. So likewise, please check all these methods associated with lists, and also there are methods associated with tuples. So this is a tuple. So if I type e dot and tab, it will show what are the uh, methods that associated with that specific type of data. And also you can check for what do you call it? Let's try string as well, right? So so this is a string type of data, right? And if I check st dot tab, and it will show you the methods associated with string type of data, which is fairly large number of methods are associated with strings. So there's no time to go one by one. So I encourage you to check these things by yourself, right? So methods are associated with different summary of uh, this topic is that the methods are associated with different uh, data types. So it is inbuilt function. So you can access those things by dot and tab, and it will give you a list of methods that is associated with this specific data type, right? So that is about methods. Any questions from this part? So we have covered up this one. So any questions you can ask. You can send me a message or something. So after this part, we have to do these functions in Python, which is also very important topic. So are you comfortable with this topic? Okay. So let me move on to the other topic, which is functions in Python. Python. So I will upload these lecture notes as soon as possible to the LMS. Please check those. Okay. Okay. Hopefully all of you can see my screen. Sorry. So in this specific part of the lecture, that I will try to explain what is a function in Python, uh, how to create and deal with functions. Deal means interact with functions, right? So it is functions are considered as the main kind of block or building block when we create larger programs, right? So because rather than writing the same code again and again, you just split into you just split your code into functions, right? And then you call that specific function every time. So as an example, everything that we did so far is kind of a sort of a function, right? Okay, so then what is a function? Do you have any idea what is a function? I think you have, uh, because this may be not the first time that you are hearing about functions in program. So if you have learned Java and if you have learned C or C plus, this function is there, right? So the purpose of it, so you will create sorry, you will create a set of statements, and if you want to repeat that statement again and again, rather than writing that same code again and again, you will build a function with certain arguments. Okay, certain arguments means certain inputs, right? And then whenever you require, you can use that specific identifier to run the code that you need, right? So uh, the data redundancy is not there. Redundancy means ඔගොල්ලෝ එකම දේ ආපහු ආපහු ලියනවා කියන එක, that is a redundancy, right? You may have heard about the word. So it will save the time. Copy paste කරන එකට time එකක් යනවනේ. So it will save the time and it will give you a very clean code, right? If you're writing the same code and again, so for a large program, can be very difficult to identify if there are any bugs, right? So if you have divided it into functions, the advantage is that once you correct the specific function which gives an error, it will automatically uh, fix the code where this function is used elsewhere, right? So you don't have to go each and every page and correct the code. Instead of that, you will single-handedly correct one specific set of codes which is inside the function, and you will be okay. So that is what will happen. So as this text said, function will be the most basic level of using code in the Python. So as I told you, avoid redundancy or avoid uh, repeating the code again and again. You can use uh, functions, right? So why we have to use functions? So it give you, I mean, the same answer like before. So if you are planning to use the same block of code multiple times, it will allow you to use it. So that is the importance and the reason of using function. I hope you understand, uh, because more or less you have done this one previously, right? In Java. And have you done C++? Can somebody answer C++ or C? Have you done? What are the programming languages that you have completed so far? Java, of course. And what about C++ or C? I think that you have at least done C++, well, as per my knowledge. So uh, in those languages also, the function capability of function uh, creating method is there, right? So we will discuss about how to create a function with def keyword, and I will show you some small examples, and how to call a function, how to accept parameters, and when returning data, there are two ways of returning. One is print, and other one is return, and why we have two different types of data acquisition after a function. So we'll discuss about that, and how to add a logic, and how to return multiple outputs from a function, and we can also add, of course, loops inside, and after introducing loops, I will show you how to do a tuple unpacking using a function, right? So also there's a part that where you can interact from function to function. With the function, you can interact with two functions, right? So that's also there. So we'll discuss. So this is the actually the syntax to create a function in Python, right? So we use a keyword called def definition, right? So the definition is there and the name of the function is there. So please, similar similar to a variable declaration, you have to also declare your function with meaningful words. Otherwise, nobody will understand what is this, right? And this is not a must. What comes after that? There's something called doc string or document string. So it helps actually to kind of show or kind of give an idea to a third party what this function actually do, right? So say that you several people are coding simultaneously the same program. So if another person wants to go use a piece of function that you have created, that person need to know what it really does. So that's what explained here in docstring, right? So do you remember, like, few minutes ago I told you to get how to access to help function inside from inside Python. So it will give a small introduction, right? Small introduction and small explanation. So that explanation also obtained from this docstring part, right? So you have def keyword, the name function, and the arguments that you are passing or the inputs, and this docstring, and finally whatever the uh, operation that you will carry out inside that function, and the output of that. Output means the return, right? So as I told you, there are a lot of built-in functions in Python. So there's a link here. You can click it, and it will show you the functions, inbuilt functions of Python. So it's in Python's documentation. So see, this lot of built-in functions are there. So you can directly use those things rather than writing your own. They were like before you are creating a function, check whether that function is already available as a default function in Python, right? So you can click this link. Sorry, click this link and check uh, the functions that you have access to. So let me show you. This is okay. So this is Python help file. It will for to show you the inbuilt Python functions available. So as you can see that there are several functions available. You can click and go to the function, and it will give a small introduction about the function and example code as well. So fairly good support is there for Python, right? Okay, so let's go back to the lecture. All right. So this bottom part of the text give you a small introduction about the function. So I will just read it. I will upload this one to the LMS. With it contains the same things that we discussed. So in an elaborate manner. So just go through it. So let's create an example function, right? So this function specifically is a simple function. It will specifically print uh, hello. That's all it function the function will do, right? So the structure is here def. That means Python understand this is a function that we are calling, and the variable, I mean the name of the function, and followed by parentheses, and inside the parentheses you can put some kind sort of what do you call argument. So to implement with the function or make it more advanced. So we'll of course we are going to discuss that, and followed by colons, right? And colon, and then inside this line you have to do the whatever command that you need to run. The thing is that you may remember we cannot put this one here. So if I run this one, it will give definitely an error. So the requirement is we have to indent the text, right? So if we have put tab here, right, this tab indicates, okay, this part of the line is inside this specific function. So now if you run this one, it will accept. So this is the function that we have created. So we have not called the function yet, we have just created the function, right? So the function, if everything goes correctly, if we call the function, then it will automatically print hello, right? Okay. So calling a function can be done by just typing the name of this function followed by the parenthesis. So that is the correct syntax, right? So name of the function and the parentheses. Even though we are not passing any arguments, we have to put those parentheses, right? So that is how we call the function. So if I run this one, it will print hello. That is the application of this specific function, right? So it is very important to have these parentheses followed by the name of the function when you want to use it. Even you are not passing any kind of a parametric data, right? Any arguments. So here inside this, even though you do not pass any arguments, you have to put these parentheses, right? So what happen if you do not any parentheses? So this is the function, and followed by that function, no parentheses are there. If I run this one, it will say hello is a function inside the main program. That's all it says. So in the memory, it has that say hello is just a function. So it will not run that specific function until you correct your syntax. So which is in this case parentheses, right? So don't forget to have this parentheses when you are calling a function, right? So we created a single function and we call the function. Any questions from this part? Any questions? Any concerns? Let me know. Okay, so hopefully you're okay. So let me go to the next subtopic. So we call the function and then how to deal with arguments or the inputs. So previously we didn't accept any inputs. So during the definition it goes empty. Inside the parentheses there's nothing. It's empty. That means uh, we are not accepting any arguments. So if you want to pass any arguments, say that something like this. So if you want to say hello, yeah, but to a specific name, right? So in that case, this kind of small modifications can be used, right? So we are defining a function called greeting, and we are accepting a argument or a variable which is called name. So what will happen is that it will print hello and the name. So name is the input, right? And then you can do whatever you like with that. So as an example, if I run this one, so it says hello Jack, right? So if I change this name and type Sean, if I run that, workshop. So can you see the advantage of this one? So you just have to type only one time. So the function will, without a problem, repeat itself. But if you have separate lines of codes, you have to write them one by one, which is troublesome, right? It's not easy sometimes, and your code doesn't look good as well. So this variable, you will see, it is a non-type variable, so it will not accept, or we will not be able to do any sort of uh, what do you call any sort of further actions to this variable, right? So it's storing, just storing data as non-type data. We cannot do any modifications or additions to this variable, right? If you print it, so then it comes, what are we going to do if we want to get an output from a function and to manipulate that? Manipulate means calculations or indexing or slicing, whatever. uh, if you want to do that, how do you are going to do? Printing won't work, as you can see. So it's a non-type data, so it won't work. So if it is not working, what will? So that is the question. So for that we can use the return function. Sorry. So we can use the return function, right? So print method will not save any data in its, so simply that as that. Instead of that, we have to use return, which is, it will return the result and it will store the variable inside the program or in another variable, any other method, any other method that you need, right? So how to do that? So it's just, instead of print here, so here this, we are defining a defining a function and argument, we are returning something, I mean printing something, that means we are getting something. So we have to streamline this whole set of process. So we can use the return. So if we, let me run this one. So only difference here is that we are accepting two arguments, so two numbers for addition. So we can directly use this return keyword. We want just the sum, I mean addition of number one and number two. Any sort of a, so sorry, there was a connection and so yeah, any sort of arguments, right? So we can directly put those arguments in the return line and you can get the results. So this is the function that I'm defining. So def, the function name and the arguments, and I'm returning the addition of that two numbers. So if I run this and then run this, so it will see, will return the the addition two numbers. We can store this output in a variable. So here with yeah, here. So here we couldn't save the result of this print in a variable, right? Because variable one is not stored in that one, right? But here, of course, we can store that value. So this is a variable that, yeah, I want to store the value of the addition of number 46 and 58. So this is the function name, add number. So add number is the function name, and we are passing two variables, and then we run. And if we check, so it will give you the type of that result variable is an integer. So previously it was none type when we were checking with print, right? So similarly, so what do you think that this will output? Will it output uh, as an error, or will it work? What do you think? So it will actually work. Do you remember the concatenation we discussed at early part of the lecture series? So concatenation is adding two strings. It will give you two separate. I mean, not two separate. It will add those two words and give a one mark word, right? So for this specific function, you can use strings as well. So it depends whether you need or not. But for this specific function, you can do it, right? So that is how we interact and create functions, right? So this is a very common question. So what is the difference between return and print, right? So the main difference is that return keyword, it will allow you to save your result, right? So in an variable as an output, so you can manipulate that specific variable and use it at a different part of your code. So print function, it just displays. So as the name says itself, it will just show you the result, just display, right? It doesn't save it in the memory. So we cannot use it for future calculations or future reference. So that is the main difference, right? So any questions from that? So we can run few lines of codes and get get the clarifications if you need any. So any questions or any clarification you need? Okay, so let me show you some examples here. So I'm defining something called print result. So A and B are the two variables that I'm accepting, or the two arguments that I'm accepting. So it will print the addition of A and B. So I will run this one, this line, save. So the next line, it will define something called return result. That is also a function. So in this specific function, it will also accept two arguments, and it will return the addition of that two arguments that we are feeding, right? So let me run that line as well. So let's check what will happen in print result if you run print result function, right? Okay, so it will give 50. It will display, right? So if I run this one, it will return 15 as well, right? So seems both of them are the same, right? So what happen if we actually want to save the result? So we want to refer to this resource at later part of the code, right? So if I run this one and if you try to save, see, so even if I want to check this, specific variable, it will not output any. See, I'm trying to save it. Save the printed version to the result, but it will not save any of it, right? If you check the type, is non-type data, right? So do you understand that there is the main difference? But when it comes to results, sorry, return, say if I run this line of code, and if you check the variable value, it will show you a variable value, right? And you can do any sort of a, so this, that variable has 4 incorporated here, right? So you can do any sort of a typical mathematical function there, right? So if you run this one, it is actually multiplying 40 by 40, right? So see that if you use result as a return, you can work with it in the future. It will save it. But if you save it as a, I mean, if you try to get it as a print function, it won't save it. But instead of that, you just display and forget about it. That's all. So that is the main difference between return and print functions, I mean, rather methods, right? Do you have any questions? Any clarifications you need? So are you okay with those two types, return and print? Okay. So let's move on to the next topic. So now we discussed about uh, how to create a function, how to feed arguments or parameters to a function, and do any kind of calculations or anything using those parameters, and finally printing it or returning the results as you require, right? So that's the next step is constructing logical statements with functions. So adding some logics to operations. So that is how you develop a function to do more complex or more advanced things. All right. Okay. Before that, I want to recall some of the basics that we did. So maybe you remember that there was a method called percentage sign. So modulo. So modulo means it will return the remainder. So if you divided something by 2 and check the remainder, if it is 0, then we can confirm it whether it's a even or odd number, right? So same argument, same thing can be used to build up a function to check inserted number whether it's even or a odd number. So let me show you. So this is typical modular function. So 2 modulo by 2, it will return 0. 20 also the same, because you don't you don't have any remainders. And මොනවද දෙකෙන් බෙදුවට පස්සේ මොකුත් ඉතුරු වෙන්නේ නැහැ, right? Result එක බිඳුවයි. This 21 is different, because if you divided 2, sorry, you divided 21 by 2, the remainder will be just 1. And similarly, here also the same. It will output, or it will return that there's 1 remaining if you divided 21 by 2. So the modulus function is the one that you have to choose, right? So then we can introduce an argument. So comparison operators are the way to introduce an argument. In this case, we are checking whether the modular function, after modular function, the result is 0 or 1. So do you remember this is one is double equal signs, means we are comparing two sides, not assigning. We are comparing the two sides. So it will check whether this side is equal to, I mean, the left hand side is equal to the right hand side, right? So in this specific case, what is the output? What would be the output? So we are using a comparison operator. So that means, what is the output? It's a Boolean output, right? Do you remember? We did this one last week or week before that. Comparison operator means that it will give you an output of a Boolean, I mean, output as a Boolean operation. Okay. So if I run this one, this will give you as true. This is false. Okay. So we will use the same kind of a principle to construct a function. So rather than checking an input one by one, we will accept a number and we will divide it by 2, or we will take the modulo of it and we will check whether it is true or false, right? So we'll start from the beginning. So definition. So def is the keyword to create a function, and then you have to give a meaningful name to that function. So the meaningful names I have given here is even check. So this specific one is checking the whether the input number here is odd or even, right? That is what it is checking. And colon is there, so that is normal syntax, and we are returning the result. So we will return the number and modulo of that number, right? We will divide it by 2 and we'll get the remainder. We are checking the remainder of this number and we are checking whether it is equal to 0, right? So this, the output of this specific function will be a what? It is a logical output. It will give you true or false output, right? So let's check. So I will run this line and even check. Argument is number 20. It will return true, right? Then we are calling the function again. Even check, argument is 21. So it will give you false. So it's a very simple method. You don't have to type, and every time you don't have to type number and the modulo and equal 0 to check whether is true, even or odd number. You just call the function and you will input the value that you need to check. That is what this specific function do, right? So we can add more what do you call complexity to that. We can improve that, right? So instead of you giving a number, so what we can do is we can introduce a list, right? So otherwise we have to get the number one by one and check again and again. This is not very good practice. Instead of that, what we can do is we can create a function, right? So what this function will do is that it will check the number inside this list and it will output whether it's an even or odd number, right? So if at least one even number is available in the list, it will give you the number, right? So that is what happens. So this is the definition. So name of the function is check even list. So there's no spaces, underscores are used, and we are inputting a list. It's accepting a list, right? So not a single number, a list, right? So if there's a list, then we have to, of course, go through each number. So we can use a for loop to go through each number sequentially, right? So that is what we have to decide. So whether we are using a while loop or a for loop. If we are going sequentially, then we have to use a for loop, right? We discussed last week. So if you are using an argument, then we have to use it. You have to use while loop. So in this case, we are going. I mean, we are checking one by one numbers, one by one. So that means we have to use a for loop, a sequential uh, check of the number, right? So that is what we have done here. So for number in the list, num underscore list. So we are extracting a number, and then we have to check, or we have to control the output, control for functions. So if else, right? So if the number modulo 2 is equal to 0, then it will return true. So if there's at least one number inside inside the what do you call the list, it will return true. And this return will break the loop, or it will stop the function. Returning means it has come to its end. So nothing happens after that. It will break from here. It will not check the other numbers as well. We just check the first index, I mean first even number, and it will come out and returning true, right? So if there's no even numbers inside the list, only it will go one by one, right? Otherwise, at the first time it meets a even number, the function will end, right? තේරුණා නේද? function එක පළවෙනි even number එක හම්බුනාම නවතිනවා. So that's what happening here, right? So if uh, this is not equal to 0, right, then it will come the else part. Then we can pass. Do you remember that we discussed about uh, pass, break, return, right? Sorry, pass, break, and continue. We discussed about that. Continue means it will uh, run continuously. Pass mean it will do nothing but go back to the closest loop, right? Break mean it will break out from the loop, right? That is what happening. So we are using pass. That means we will go to the closest loop, the beginning of the closest loop. So first number of the list is being checked. If it is not a even number, it will go to the second number of that list, and it will check. Likewise, it will loop through the uh, number list and check whether the number is even or odd. In this case, even. Once it hits first, what do you call even number, it will break out from the loop and the function, and it will return true. That's what happening. So actually this is not enough, right? Let me show you something, right? So if I run this one, oh, sorry, I have run the function first. So function first, and I'm calling the function and feeding a list. A list has 1 2 3. So one even number is there, so it will return true because there's one even number. But if there's no even number in the list, as an example here, so 111, that means there's no single even number, so this will not output anything. Okay? Even if I run this one, it will not output anything because we are not asking anything. So else we just pass, that's all. We are not asking to return anything, so this is very common logical error. So we have to include some logic there. So instead of typing pass, we can add the line return false, right? So if the number is even, of course it will show you that's true. So there, if there's no even number inside the list, it will return false, right? So this is somewhat correct approach. So if it is true, it will give you the true value. It's false, it will give you the false value, right? Sorry. But see what will happen. This is also a logical error, right? So what happens is here, it will come here and it will go inside here, and it will check whether the first line is true, right? So 1 modulo 2 is 1, so that means it is not equal to 0. So it will not go inside, it will come to here, the else one. So then it will return as false, and it will break the function. Function will not run after that, because returning means if you meet return, that means that is the end of the function, right? But we have even number in the list, so there's something wrong here, right? So we have to combine this pass and return together, and to create or update our logic, right? So this is the updated version. So see, we have incorporated the pass statement and return false statement both. The difference is it will go through the whole list instead of uh, the first odd number until it will get an even number. It will run through the loop, right? Because of this pass function, if it is an even number, it will not return uh, false, it will go back to the nearest loop, right? So it will loop through the elements inside your list, right? And then if there's nothing available, nothing, no not even a single even number is available, then only it will break the loop and come outside and return false, right? So as an example, so previously see, even though there was a number 2, it returned false. So this was the problem, right? So what we did was we combined the pass and the return for functions, statements together, and we adjusted our loop, right? So now this will, yeah, sorry, I have to run this one, and this will see give you the correct answer. There's number two available, and if I check this one, it will give you the correct answer, right? So that's how step by step you develop a logic inside a function, right? You have to use this return statements correctly at correct positions, right? You know what I mean. So any questions from that? Any questions? Any concerns? So we have touched several important or critical components there. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, let's add some more logic or some more complexity. So okay, so the last function, what it did was it will go through every single element inside that specific list, and it will check whether that element is odd or even. Even if there is only one even number inside that specific list, it will uh, output it as true, right? There's a uh, even number available inside what do you call inside the list. It output true, right? So we can uh, what do you call improve our function to have a more instead of true or false, we can introduce to introduce it to give us what are the even numbers available in that specific list, right? Okay, so for that uh, I will go line by line. So for that I will definitely define the same function, right? It will still accepting the list, right? And I will create a list, an empty list, which is called even numbers. This is an empty list. So this the purpose of this one is to hold the even numbers that we are detecting, even number we are identifying from the list that we are going to feed, right? And then we will just at the beginning of this lecture we did the append function, right? Append method to introduce new elements to a list. So we can use that append methods to introduce these new elements or the elements that we are identifying as even numbers to this empty list. So that is what we are going to do. So we are going through each number. So we have to use the for loop, obviously, because we are sequencing, and number in num list, that is the list that we are introducing. So if we are detecting an even number, right? So last time we stopped it, right? Here we just return true and we stop the function. That's all we did. But instead Instead of that, we are now not stopping it. We just get that number and append that number to our list, this even number list. So we get that number and we append or we insert that number to our list, right? So if it is not even, we will not do anything. That means if it is an odd number, we will just put pass. That means it will go back to the closest running loop, right? So it will go back to the closest running loop and it will check the numbers again one by one, right? So note or observe that we have not used return any of uh, return method inside this for loop. That means we are letting uh, for loop to check all the numbers inside this list, right? But at the end of the loop or after going all through all the numbers, after going through all the numbers, then only we will return the list that we created earlier, right? So we have created an empty list, right? So we will append or we will insert any number that is available inside the list num list that we are going to provide, and after we identify each number, we will append that number to that even number list, right? So this is what we have done, and it will return the list after appending the numbers. Did you understand? Just go through the code line by line. If you don't understand, please let me know. It's very important to understand what you are writing, right? Because now it's simple. In the future you may write very complex sort of programs. So in that case you may not understand all the lines and codes that's there, but at this beginners level, it's very important to identify the codes and codes and what it means line by line. It helps you to improve. So any questions that whether you can understand what I'm saying or not? So instead of outputting true or false statement, it will go through all the numbers and it will give you the list of even numbers, right? So you understand? Okay, so let's try this code and see, right? So let me run this one, this code, right? And now when you are calling a function as we discussed earlier, so you will give the name, and inside of the parentheses you will give your input, right? Here the list of numbers. So list is defined as square brackets. So up to here is the list, that is the input, and it has 2, 4, 6, 8 as the even numbers, right? So this is the output that we expect. So it should return these numbers as a list. So let me run this line. So as we expected, it has given the values of the even numbers inside this list. So let us check what will happen there if there are no uh, even numbers, right? That means if if the input that we are giving or the list that we are feeding has all odd numbers, that means it will not return anything. So this list is empty, right? Initially it was empty. So after we run the function, we have not append anything and it has returned nothing, right? So any question from that part before we move on to the next? any questions about this build of the function and use of the function? You can type these code lines to a Python notebooks and see. If you want time, you can let me know. I will I will show the code. Will show the code and allow you to code and see. If you have your notebooks open, Jupyter notebooks open, just run it and see. Check what are these outputs, and if you have questions, you can ask. So have you tried the codes? Check the check the codes there. So have you do you have any questions? Any clarifications required? Okay, so let me move on to the last part. You can stop me and ask if you have any questions about this. Okay, and let me move on to the last part. So, do you remember that we discussed about tuples and how we use tuple unpacking? So, as you may remember, the tuples are they're immutable, right? So, we use tuples to pass information among the codes, right? From one, say, as an example, from one function to another function, right? So, if there's some mistake, there's possibility that can get corrupted. So, without if the if you are passing the data using say a lists, it is it can be easily get manipulated, or maybe wrong element can be passed through. To avoid that, so we can use tuples. So that is the main reasons for having tuples in Python, right? So since you cannot work with tuples directly, so we have to unpack the tuples, right? That is what you call tuple unpacking. So you have to extract data from tuple, and then only you can work with it, right? So for tuple unpacking, do you remember we used for loops? So here what will happen, it will go through this list which contains tuples, and it will print each item, right, as a pair. So it will print each pair, right? See, name and the value, right? So we can access what inside the tuple using this form, right? So stock comma price, so stock and comma price is what we are uh, mapping in this specific case. In stock prices means in this list. So if we want to get only stock, the name can ask to print only the stock. So if I run, it will get only the first part of the tuple. And price, of course, if I run this one, it will give you the price only. This is 200, 300, 400, that one. So right, so that is what we did for tuple unpacking. So then we can work with the unpacked tuple, right? So we can make it as a function, right? So to unpack the tuple, we can use a function. So let's imagine following example. Say that you have three workers. So we are checking the work hours of each worker, right? So it is in a tuple as tuple pairs inside a list, right? So say that we want to check who has done more work within that month, and give a vote to employee of the month or something like that. So we can create a function for that. So this is what this function do, right? So here we have the data work hours as a list, right? So we have defined, instead of going for a line by line tuple unpacking with several loops, we are integrating the same loop inside a function. So we want to identify who works the most, right? So that can be set it as current max, or the maximum number of hours. So this is a variable that we are defining, okay? And this employee of the month, that is also variable. So currently we don't know, it's an empty variable, right? So for then we have to do that unpacking, tuple unpacking, similar to the previous occasion. For so employee and hours, that is what inside this, right? Employee and hours, that is what inside. In work hours, that means this is the work hours list, right? And then we have to introduce a logic, so to identify who has done the most work. So we have to go through the numbers, each numbers, right? So hours, if the hour is larger than current maximum, we will update the current maximum of the current value. And the employee of the month is the that specific employee, right? And then we go to the next one. The next one, we'll check the hours and the current value again. If the current value is larger than the current max, then that person become the uh, employee of the month, right? If not, we just pass, right? Likewise, we will go through each tuple pair, right? Employee and our tuple pair. And after all the check is done, we will return the value of employee of the month and the number of hours that specific person worked, right? In this case, so here the Cassie is the person. She has done 800 hours. So if I run this one, we'll check. We say Cassie. So she is the highest one, right? If I type other way around, say that Billy has done, these are imaginary numbers, and nobody can do 1,000 hours work per month. It's not possible, right? Just for understanding sake, see now it will become the, it will become Billy, right? So we can keep this one in a variable whole result, and you can update or do anything that you need to that result variable, right? And also you can have it a variable like this. So these are two different options are there, right? The name and hours. So you can get separate outputs as like this as well, right? So this is how you can automate tuple unpacking, and you can improve your code, right? So you don't have to do this again and again. Once you have done this construction of the function correctly, you can check the values, right? So please try, if you have the open your Jupyter notebooks, you can try this one. Please try and see. I hope you can see the screen. This, so just check the codes and see, and then you can see, you can ask if you have any questions regarding that. I'll give you 5 minutes to type the code and run. So have you tried it, the codes? Any questions, any concerns? Okay, so for today I will conclude the lecture, right? So if you have any questions regarding today's lecture, you can reach out to me. You can email me and see. I will upload the lecture notes uh, to the LMS. So please be prepared. We will do another in class assignment next week. Okay. So if you have any questions, you can ask. Right. Uh, okay. So thank you. I will log out.